Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Black Sheep Tribune podcast. My name is Teague, and I am your host, and here I talk about true crime stories that you may have never heard of because everyone's story matters. As I promised in my last episode, before I get into the actual subjects of today's episode, I will be giving you guys a little bit of a 2020 recap for me. Basically just telling you guys about things that happened for me in 2020. I think 2020 was a hell of a year for really everybody, to say the least. But I just kind of wanted to let you guys in on what personally happened for me in 2020. I have been away from the podcast for a very long time, much longer than I ever anticipated to be away. And I don't necessarily feel like I owe anyone an explanation for that. But I also know that I haven't let you guys in on my personal life a whole lot. And I know that that can become very one-sided and probably feels kind of weird, not really knowing anything about the person behind the voice if you don't know me personally. So I thought this would be a really good opportunity to kind of let you guys in on why 2020 is such a crazy year for me personally. So yeah, but before I do that, I just want to say that I hope everyone is doing all right, staying safe to the best of your ability. I'm hoping that maybe if we can get certain people in our country to cooperate, that maybe we can be over and done with this sometime soon. But until then, I will just keep saying that I hope everyone out there is staying safe, like I have on every single episode. But yeah, so okay, let's go ahead and jump into my little 2020 recap here. So as far as the start of 2020, like January and February, I really don't remember much that was going on. Yeah, I mean, I was still working in healthcare at the time as a direct support staff. But other than that, I really can't think of much that was really going on. I was also still posting content, so I guess I was keeping myself busy with that, as well as work. But nothing significant that I can really think of. And then COVID hit in March. Well, it didn't hit in March, but we found out about it in March. And like I said, I was still in healthcare at the time, and that made my job much more difficult than it had been previously, and it became much more stressful for me. So a little bit after COVID hit, I kind of started thinking about maybe finding another job, which was difficult because I really loved what I did, but just with how things were at the time, it was just, things were getting more and more stressful by the day, it felt like. And then in May was what I call the reboot of the Black Lives Matter movement, with Breonna Taylor and then George Floyd, both dying because of police brutality. I would say the reboot actually really happened after George died. I include Breonna Taylor because she was killed around the same time. It actually happened before George was killed, but they are two of the biggest names I feel like you hear mentioned in the movement, and two of the biggest cases that I feel like fueled the reboot of the movement. So May was obviously very difficult. The fact that the Black Lives Matter movement, like I said, rebooted was, it's obviously a good thing because more conversations are being started about race and how Black people are treated in this country and so on. But it was really sad to see what came before that to make that happen. The day that I saw George Floyd suffocated on camera for nearly 9 minutes on Facebook, definitely changed my life. I don't know that I'll ever forget that day. It reminds me of this protest sign that I've seen over and over on like Instagram and Twitter and stuff. And it's just this girl holding the sign, and it says, George Floyd was not a wake-up call. The same alarm has been going off for decades, and we just keep hitting snooze, which I obviously think is very true. Things like that things like the things that happened to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor have been happening for a long time, and many other injustices against people of color, black people specifically, have been happening for a long time. But the thing I think for me was that it's one thing to know that things like this happen, and it's another thing to see a man be suffocated on camera. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like I knew I knew what was going on, but to see it filmed and to be able to watch it on Facebook, that was just a life-changing thing for me, I think, and I think for many other people as well. So yeah, after that happened, I I don't know. I was kind of on one after that. Like I was very outspoken about my opinions having to do with both the cases and other cases and just other topics that the Black Lives Matter movement brought up at the time. I'm still very outspoken about those things, but I mean, I was posting something about it all day, every day for, I would say, a month or two, until I kind of hit a wall and was like, I need to take a break. So yeah, I'm very, very outspoken about these issues. I feel like more outspoken than I've ever been at the time, like right after George Floyd was murdered. And, one thing that was definitely interesting, surprising, and hurtful to see was that, so my husband is white, his family is white, and so when all this talk of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor came around, they really didn't have much to say. My husband did, but not like his family, which was very surprising to me. His family had always been great with me. Very, we've never had any issues as far as like my race goes. But I guess what I hadn't really realized was that like even though people may not have an issue with your skin color, doesn't mean they're gonna like speak out when they need to, even if they're family. Yeah, so that was kind of difficult. Well, very difficult for me, honestly. And then in June, I came out as bisexual. I had come out to like people close to me like 2 years prior, like my husband already knew and stuff. The decision to like post about it like publicly, like on my personal social media and stuff, kind of just came on a whim. Like I didn't really ever plan to like make an announcement about it. I definitely don't feel like it was necessary. Like even now I don't feel like it was necessary. But homosexuality is something that it was and still is not tolerated in my blood family. So the fact that I was bisexual or pansexual, I kind of use them interchangeably, honestly. They're not quite the same thing, but but for me, I mean, I would use one or both to describe myself. But anyway, the fact that I was bisexual or pansexual was something that took me quite a while, I feel like, to really even kind of be okay with within myself. Like, I'm even still not super, like, okay with it sometimes. Like, I definitely am much better than I was when I first, like, came to terms with it. But yeah, it was just something that would not have been tolerated in my household growing up. And so I don't know. I was happy that I felt proud enough and okay enough about it within myself that I could like come out and tell people about it. So I just decided to. Also, it was Pride Month, so I was kind of like, why not? In July, I turned 23. Nothing too spectacular or exciting about that, but I did turn 23. Okay, and then in August, so I had mentioned before how my husband's family, like, they weren't unsupportive of the Black Lives Matter movement. It's not like they were saying anything to me about, like, the things I would say or post about it. They just didn't really say much about it at all. Which, like I said, like, I feel like I let it go for a while, but after a while, it's like, silence isn't helping anything either. Like, silence is also violence because you're not doing anything to help the situation. So yeah, that was kind of starting to weigh on me a bit. Um, and then my sister-in-law, who also had been silent, had said nothing about Breonna Taylor, nothing about George Floyd, nothing about the movement in general. She, so if you remember, a little bit after, I think in July or August, probably August. Anyway, this little boy, little white boy named Cannon, passed away after I believe he was shot by a black man. And my sister-in-law had all the sadness and grief in the world for that little boy, which obviously it's a tragic story. It's absolutely horrible that that happened. It's horrible when any child or person dies. But it was difficult for me to see her post about him and then say nothing about George Floyd and nothing about Breonna Taylor, and nothing about the movement. So I I reposted the post and I said it's interesting to see people post about this little boy and have nothing to say about Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. That then basically just started a fight between me and her, where she was attacking me personally, and I was just coming back with facts and just trying to explain my position, and she continued to attack me personally. And it got to the point where she was calling me privileged, because I had a I had a good I had a good upbringing financially. I was very spoiled financially growing up. So she said something to the effect of like, I might be white, but you have privilege because you had money growing up. And then went on to say something to the effect of, you're in a white family now, and not all of us agree with your opinions. So at that point, with his parents not having a lot to say about the movement in general, and the George Floyd case, the Breonna Taylor case, and so on, and then with his sister-in-law attacking me the way that she did, I decided to cut contact with all of them, which was difficult, a very difficult decision for me to make. You know, I still love his parents very much. Like, they're very nice people. But I'm, you know, I'm also black. So I don't feel like I can compromise necessarily on something like this. Like, the silence is deafening. And then the fact that no one stuck up for me when my sister-in-law treated me that way, I was just done with it. So then, after I decided that I wasn't going to talk to any of them anymore, his parents basically asked if I could try to explain my position to them and better explain the position of the Black Lives Matter movement to them. And at first, I was like, yeah, like, I can do that. You know what? That's a reasonable request. So at first I was like, yeah, like, I can research and I can research and I can, pull some things together to kind of help them understand. But then I also started to have mixed feelings about it. Like, I was kind of like, yeah, I can do that. But then there was a part of me that was like, I don't know, like, that doesn't, like, this feels weird almost. Like, I kind of wasn't sure why, but I was like, it's not sitting right with me. So the more I thought about it, it was just that it's not that I don't want to help them understand and that I wouldn't go through the effort to help them understand. But I also, as the only person of color in their life, do not feel like it's my responsibility to do so. They are both grown people who have any really tool they need to research and learn things about Black history and things like that. They both have smartphones and access to Google and a Wi-Fi signal, which I feel like is more than enough to really educate yourself on really anything you want to educate yourself on. And really, at the root of it all, I was just like, at the end of the day, with issues like this, as far as like the Black Lives Matter movement. And if you're not a person of color, not a black person, I feel like at the end of the day, or it all just boils down to you having empathy for other people that have struggles that are not like yours. And that's not something that I can teach and or invoke in someone. The more I thought about it, I was like, well, am I like if I try to help them understand, am I just going to be teaching them black history, or is my goal to make them care? And it felt like my goal was more to make them care, and I don't think I can do that. I don't know what case or what statistic or what resource I could show them or bring to them that would make them care. I'm also just a very strong believer in the fact that if someone wants to get something done, they will find a way to get it done. So I just felt like I can't make you care. And if that's what I'm really trying to do here, which is what I feel like I would be doing, then I feel like I'm wasting everyone's time, because it's kind of like either you care or you don't. And like I said, they are very nice people. I still love them very much. But I'm not going to hold someone's hand and make them try to learn about something if they don't want to, because they are fully capable and fully equipped to do so on their own. Okay, so after that, I was just kind of struggling with the fact that I didn't really have any extended family at all now, since I had been, like I said, keeping in very limited contact with my blood family, and then now cutting contact with the family I married into. I really don't have anybody now other than my husband and our dog and our cats. And that was something that I feel like I really struggled with at first. I think honestly part of it was just the fact I was used to a big family. My mother has 9 siblings, so on her side of just on her side of the family, there can be a lot of people at family gatherings. And that was something I became very used to growing up. So I think honestly that was kind of part of it, was just like not really having like a big, or not even big, but I guess just like not having like an extended family, an extension, more people you want to go see on like holidays and stuff like that, or people you might want to hang out with sometimes and stuff like that. So I was kind of really struggling with that. And then somewhere in August, I left my job in healthcare and I got a job at a liquor store. And changing jobs is always weird for me. I don't like change as much as I put myself through it. I don't actually like it. So it was kind of weird leaving healthcare and going back into retail. I worked in retail for a long time, so I guess learning the actual job wasn't the difficulty. But I don't know. Retail is just a special kind of suck, like it's almost just like I had to readjust getting back into that kind of suck. So yeah, that was kind of weird, getting back into being in retail again. And then it got even more difficult for me when, honestly, okay, so about whenever October hits, I just get this really weird kind of like bittersweet feeling that kind of just lasts like all the time, like from like October until like December or January. And I think that's because I very much like fall and winter as seasons. But with not having, with not having a close relationship with my blood family for the past 4 years, well, maybe three, for the last like 3 years, like the holidays have always been a tough time for me, they just always have, but this time it was even more so since I wasn't in contact with my husband's family either. So about October, I was like, I love the weather and like all of that stuff, but I know the holidays are coming. So it's almost like a weird anxiety that's like kind of good and kind of bad at the same time. And yeah, so once like October and like the beginning of November hit, I was like, I cannot do a holiday season in retail this year. I cannot do it. So I started looking for something else. And near the end of me like getting ready to leave there, I started noticing that I really didn't like when people would like call me ma'am or miss or anything like that. And it was kind of a weird feeling. It was also kind of something I had to get used to again, like along with everything else in retail. Because when I was in healthcare, it was much less, I wouldn't say formal because like retail isn't formal, but there was no like miss or ma'am really. It was more just like my name, because you're like working with people in their homes and stuff. So they would just call like you your name, not really like miss or ma'am or sir or anything. So yeah, so that was kind of something that I had to adjust to again. And it didn't really bother me when I started working there, but near the end of when I was working there, it did start to bother me, and I didn't really know why. I was just kind of like, I just don't like it. Like I wish there was something else that people could refer to me as, but I also didn't really think, like, I didn't want people to call me sir or anything either. So that was kind of a weird thing, and then I just kind of pushed it off. I was like, whatever, maybe I'm just, I don't know, having a time or something. And then I started working for the current company that I work for now in December. And so, okay, so about a week after I interviewed at the company I'm with now, yeah, it was that kind of that same feeling of like I don't like people calling me miss or ma'am or girly. But it was like I was just sitting in my recliner in the living room one night, and I was just like, you know what? I don't just not like it. I fucking hate it. Like, it was like, I just like all of a sudden I was like, you know, I don't like it. I don't like it anymore. Yeah, so then I was like, okay, well, maybe I'm non-binary then, like if it bothers me that much. And at first I felt really weird about possibly like identifying as non-binary. Um, I thought kind of because of the time that it happened, I might have just been like faking it for attention. Just because like I said, I don't have my blood family in my life, and now I don't have my husband's family in my life. And so maybe I'm like, well, maybe I'm just like lonely and like just wanting attention or something. Like maybe I'm faking it. But now that I've sat with it longer and stuff, I kind of feel like it's the opposite. Like in a way that I feel like since I don't really have like older family members in my life anymore, I don't really feel the need to be so quiet about how I feel. As so yeah, so it's kind of a bittersweet thing, not having extended family in your life, because like I said, it's very, it can be very sad as far as like not having anyone to go see on holidays and things like that. But at the same time, it's very freeing, at least for me, because I just feel like I don't have anyone who's gonna like have a negative opinion on like something I want to do or something, or how I want to identify or anything like that. So I feel like even though I was really upset about not having family members in my life and stuff, I feel like it kind of allowed me to question my gender identity, and I feel like it just allowed more room for me to kind of explore and think about it without having to be like, oh, well, if I am non-binary, I can't say anything because so and so might not. Like I just didn't really have that pressure of it, which, like I said, is sad, but it's also I also feel kind of lucky that I get that, because there are many people who are very worried about their family's opinions, and how their families feel about it. So I feel like I'm very lucky that I don't really have to do that as far as my gender identity and stuff goes. So yeah, so I'm thinking, I'm like, well, maybe I'm non-binary, and maybe I'd rather use like they them pronouns instead of like she her pronouns, which I had previously been using. The more I thought about it and kind of sat with the label and the pronouns, I definitely felt like they stuck and felt better than she her pronouns and just identifying as like a cis woman. And then I'm sure, as you probably know, like most trans people and non-binary people change their names. Like, I wanted to go by something different. Me thinking about a different name didn't really have anything to do with my gender identity necessarily. Taylor is still very gender neutral. But since, like I said, I am not very close to any family, I just kind of wanted something that was mine, that I chose, and just kind of felt right for me. So then I was like, okay, well, if I pick something else, what would I pick? Just theoretically, like I just kind of let myself think about it. And I think the first one I thought of was Billy, because I thought Billy was just kind of cute. I also like Billie Eilish, but so yeah, there was Billy, and I feel like there were a few more, but I really don't think there were a lot. I mean, there are a few other names that I like. Like, I think Winslow is pretty cool. I also think Carlisle is pretty cool, but also gives me like really strong Twilight vibes. Um, so there weren't really like a lot of things I could think of, and I kind of looked through like the, baby names, like gender neutral, like baby name websites, and I was just like, I don't know, like nothing's really catching my eye necessarily. And then kind of randomly, I thought about this girl that I met in college, and her last name was Teague. And I was like, I kind of like that. Like, I don't, like, I know it's a last name, or at least in that case, it was used as a last name, and I think most commonly it is. Um, but I was like, I like that. Like, I like the way it sounds. It's kind of cool. So I looked it up just to see like what it meant. Not that it like really matters what your name means or anything. It doesn't really mean anything to me, especially since my my old name literally means like to cut. Uh, so it didn't really like matter to me necessarily, but I just thought, we'll look it up, we'll see what it means, right? So I look it up, and in Gaelic or Irish, it actually means well, it's a boy name technically, for a philosopher or a poet, of which I am neither. But I do very much enjoy writing, and I very much enjoy sociology and philosophy and things like that. So I thought that was pretty cool too. I was like, that's kind of fitting, as far as just me liking writing and sociology and stuff. And then I also realized that the nickname for Teague could just be T, like TEA, which is kind of cool because I was thinking about going by just T. So yeah, I just felt like it fit in a lot of ways, and I really liked it. And so I was like, well, I'm gonna go by Teague now. So I sat with everything for a few days, I think less than a week, meaning the label, pronouns, and my chosen name. And then I decided to tell my husband, come out to my husband, who has been very, very supportive, and I'm very, very lucky to have a partner who has been so supportive. I know not everyone gets that, and sometimes people coming out can really affect or even ruin marriages. So I'm very lucky to have him and have someone who's so supportive of me. I didn't really like formally come out the way I did, like when I came out as bi. Um, I've never really made like a post about it on my social media, at least not like a big, like, like coming out post. I've posted things about being non-binary, I think, every once in a while. But as far as that goes, I honestly just changed my name and put my pronouns in my bio on like all my social media, and was just kind of like, people will figure it out. Like, I mean, people can read, so yeah, so it feels really nice to at least be out, to my husband, because he's the only person that's really important to me, but also to be what I would call as out, on my like social media and stuff. The only place that I am not out, at least completely, is at work. That's something I'm still working on. I'm out to my boss and one of my coworkers. So at least a couple people there know, which is nice. Work with predominantly white men, and I'm a black non-binary person, so I don't know. I just feel I don't know, kind of weird about it sometimes, I guess. But I do want to come out just because I get really tired of my old name and pronouns being used all the time. Another big thing that I've been dealing with as far as my another thing that I've been dealing with as far as my gender identity is really the big like feeling of that I'm inconveniencing everyone. Like I know it can be hard to try to switch to new pronouns for someone and a new name for someone. And I also know that they them pronouns, especially since I like they them exclusively, can be kind of difficult. Or well, to me they're not difficult. To me, I understand that they can be used in a like they can be used as a plural noun and a singular or pronoun. But I also understand that it's kind of confusing for people because they can be used as both, or it can be used as both. Um, so yeah, I just kind of have this like uneasy feeling of like I don't want to bother people with it almost, but I also know that if someone came out to me or came out at work or whatever, that I would 100% try to use their preferred pronouns and name. So that's kind of one way that I kind of justify like if I do want to come out at work and stuff, which I probably will at some point. That even if it's a little bit of an inconvenience for people, like they will be okay. um, it can be weird and kind of difficult or whatever, but it's really not hard at the end of the day to at least try to respect people's pronouns and chosen names and stuff like that. So yeah, that was my year. That was my 2020. I changed jobs 3 times. I came out twice. Um, and then everything else that was just kind of happening in our country and in the world in general. It was a crazy year to say the least. But yeah, so I'm just happy that I am back and I, can tell you guys about all the craziness that happened last year. I'm happy that I have been healthy throughout I was healthy the entire year, which I feel like is, incredible given some circumstances. But yeah, just I don't know. Thank you guys so much for, listening to all my personal stuff that I went through this year. And if you have listened to my older stuff and you're still here with me, thank you so much for sticking around. I hope you learned at least a few things about me today. Um, but yeah, so let's go ahead and get into the actual subjects of this episode. All right, so the first person I want to talk about today is Sarah Grossman. She was a 22-year-old peaceful protester who lived in Ohio. While she was peacefully protesting, she was tear gassed and then taken to Sycamore Hospital in Miamisburg, Ohio. She later passed away, and the first article that I read about her said that she had asthma. And then I found out later that her family actually said there was no such history of asthma. I then saw another article that said her autopsy showed that she died because of a drug overdose. Her family also denounced this. And then I saw another article that said her autopsy showed that she had died from natural causes due to a rare undiagnosed condition that she had called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or just abbreviated to EDS. I wasn't able to find out. Well, and they say it was undiagnosed, so if she had it, her family probably didn't know that she had it, being that it was undiagnosed. I also had no idea what EDS was when I heard of this, so I thought I would look it up and also give you guys some information about it, just because, well, it's so rare, first of all, but I just wanted to see if it would have any connection with her being, like, if it would affect, like, if she was tear gassed or something, like, because at first I read she had asthma, and I was like, oh, like, if you have asthma and you're tear gassed, like, you're probably more likely to be, much more affected by tear gas, right? So, I just wanted to see if EDS would have anything like if it would affect her more if she was tear gassed or something. Okay, so EDS affects the connective tissue, skin, joints, and blood vessel walls, according to the Mayo Clinic. It's hereditary. There are 10 different types. The most common is the fourth type. People who have it usually have hyperflexible skin, and the life expectancy of someone who has it is about 50 years, with about a 12% mortality rate. The syndrome is usually caused by issues having to do with arteries, and the average age for issues with blood vessels in your gut to surface is around 24. Keep in mind Sarah was 22, which isn't far off. So, yeah, so obviously I can't say that Sarah was definitely or that she definitely passed away because she was tear gassed. But the one thing that I did find interesting was how many times the story changed as to why she passed away. First I heard she had asthma, then it was, what was it? Oh, then it was a drug overdose, which her family said she didn't do drugs. And then it was because of this rare disease called EDS. Like I said, EDS is very rare. I don't know a lot about it. I mean, she, I guess, obviously could have passed away from natural causes due to the undiagnosed disease. But I do find it very odd that the story changed so many times and they were so different. Because if we have an autopsy, it should be very clear, at least to what the examiner has said that it is. So I don't understand how we got it so different 3 different times. I also think it's strange too, just because I think obviously, like, if she was tear gassed and that had something to do with her death, that's not something that people want publicized. So I think that fact, and then the fact that the story changed so many times, is kind of suspicious. But like I said, it does say that the age that people usually start having issues with EDS is around 24, and she was 22. But the other thing is that the disease only has a 12% mortality rate, which I would say is not very high. So like I said, I cannot conclusively say that any one thing caused Sarah's death. But I do just think it's strange how the story has been handled and why the story has changed so many times. She was a recent graduate of Ohio State University. She had a bachelor's in environment, economy, development, and sustainability. She planned to get her master's at the Universidad of Belgrano in Buenos Aires, Argentina. I just want to say rest in peace to Sarah, and I am so sorry about what happened to her family. If the fact that she was tear gassed affected her death in any way, I feel absolutely horrible about that. There's no reason for people to be tear gassed when they're peacefully protesting. And it's just heartbreaking that someone at 22 was killed, possibly because of a protest that they went to when fighting for racial equality. The next protester I want to talk about is CJ Montano. He is a former Marine and a music student that was protesting in Los Angeles. There's actually a video of this encounter that you can find, I think, on YouTube. You can find pretty much anything on YouTube, honestly. There's actually a video of what happened to CJ. I'm pretty sure I just found it on YouTube. You can find a video of really anything on YouTube. But anyway, the video just shows him slowly walking up to officers on Sunset Boulevard. He has his hands up to show that he's not a threat. And then they then shoot him in the head with a 40 millimeter less than lethal launcher. Basically, I'm guessing a rubber bullet. One thing that I noticed in the video that I thought was important to point out was that CJ, and again, I'm not there, obviously, so I'm just looking at the video trying to guess trying to guess basically how far people were from him and things. But it appeared that he was at least like 10 feet away from any other person in like all directions at the time that they were shot, or that he was shot. And I thought that was important to note because it's not like the police were being like mobbed or like a bunch of people were like running at them or anything and they like panicked and like shot some bullets or something. It definitely was not like a high stress situation like that. It's literally just one man walking up. I mean, there's people around him, but not like super close. And there's not like a sea of people anywhere near him. And you can just see him walking up to them with his hands up. I don't know if he was going to try to talk to them or what he was going to do. But I just thought it was important to note that there weren't like a lot of people running at them or anything like that. He was literally just walking up to them pretty much by himself and got shot in the head. I also think it's important to point out that even though it was a less than lethal launcher, or what I'm guessing a rubber bullet being shot at him, just because those are not real bullets does not mean that they don't hurt. They're actually designed to be shot like at the ground so that it'll hit the person in the leg and like debilitate them in the moment. But that's not how they were being used in this case and how I've seen them used in other cases. So even though it wasn't like a real bullet or anything that he was shot with, if you shoot someone in the head with these fucking rubber bullets, it will hurt and or kill them, like very seriously. So I just wanted to make it clear that even though it wasn't like a regular bullet, it's still A, unnecessary, and B, very dangerous to shoot a big bullet, like a big rubber bullet like that at someone's head. After he was shot, CJ spent 2 days in the hospital. 2 of them were in the ICU with serious bleeding in his brain. He later actually said that this was the 4th or 5th time he had actually been shot while he was out protesting. The shooting is now under investigation by the LAPD Force Investigation Division. Giselle Espinoza, who's a spokeswoman for the LAPD, when she was speaking on the matter, she actually called it an unintentional head strike. The department did not comment on why they've already considered the shooting an unintentional head strike. But CJ has come out and said that he does have plans to sue, and his lawyers say that he has sustained a brain injury, and other sources have said that he now suffers from vertigo and hearing loss because of the shooting. I just want to say thank you to CJ for standing up for racial inequality and then being shot down by a country that you served for. I am so sorry that happened to you. Again, to me, the incident looked completely uncalled for and completely unnecessary, and I'm so sorry that this happened to you, but I do applaud you for standing up and going out and protesting, and also planning to sue them because they need it. Okay, the last person I want to talk about today is actually not a protester. This one, I feel like if any of them you've probably heard about. His name is Charf Lyod. His name wasn't in the headlines, okay? So, like, that name probably doesn't mean anything to you. But who I'm talking about is the homeless man who was shot in the face by the LAPD, and a photographer took his picture of it. He was in a wheelchair. There's multiple pictures of him bleeding from his face after being shot by, like I said, the LAPD. So if that rings a bell, that's the story that I'm talking about here. His actual name is Charf Lyod. Like I said, he is a homeless man with a disability, and he was shot in the face by the LAPD. Like I said, he was not protesting when this happened. He just happened to be in between the police and the protesters when they opened fire with, again, less than lethal weapons, so more than likely rubber bullets. I just wanted to say I don't think it, like I said in the last one, I don't think it matters what they used to shoot him with, because he was bleeding from his head. So anything that makes you bleed from your face is clearly dangerous. I don't think it matters that it was a less than lethal weapon. I mean, I guess he probably would have died had it been a regular weapon, but still inexcusable in my opinion. Many sources have said that before he was shot in the face that he pled with the officers to please not use heavy force the way that they did. A lawsuit has now been filed by other advocates against the city of Los Angeles, addressing the force that has been used against protesters recently. When BuzzFeed contacted the department for comment, they claimed they knew nothing about the shooting and could not speculate on what caused his injuries without further investigation. Some sources say the local homeless shelters have been looking for him since the incident and have not been able to find him. I just wanted to say that I think it's absolutely horrible that happened to him, not only because he wasn't even protesting, but because I don't think he was, well, he's a man in a wheelchair, so he's clearly not doing anything threatening enough to them to make them shoot him in the face. And I think it's even more sad that at this point we don't know where he is. I just hope that he is okay. I hope that someone finds him. But unfortunately, with homeless people, I feel like that's almost a stretch. Unfortunately, I think every single one of these cases are absolutely sad and horrible, just because the kind of force that has been used on protesters recently, I think, is absolutely ridiculous. I know some protests have turned into riots and things like that, but from these cases, none of these were riots. So I don't understand the force that was being used by the LAPD or, I guess, the Ohio, wherever she was in Ohio, that police department as well. Obviously, many other protesters have been injured or killed during recent protests, and I do think all of these stories are tragic, regardless to how they died or were hurt or who hurt them. I just wanted to revisit these cases because at first they received a lot of media attention, but that quickly died off. So I thought it was important to revisit them and see what happened. This also may be the first of many posts like this. Protesters are still being hurt probably every day. I know they were back when these cases popped up, so there have probably been a lot of protesters hurt because they're fighting for racial equality. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is the first of many that I do. I actually haven't quite decided what I'm going to do for my next episode. I had a decision made up until like yesterday, so I was going to intro a next episode, but I do think I'm going to be focusing maybe on a Black trans woman. The first case I ever covered on the blog, and maybe here, I'm pretty sure it was the first one I covered here too, was Marsha P. Johnson, a Black trans woman who helped who really started the Pride movement before it was really even called the Pride movement, I think. But anyway, she was the first case that I covered, and there have been a lot of people, a lot of trans people turning up dead, Black trans women to be specific. So I think it would be important to cover a case like that next. I just haven't really decided who I'm going to do yet. So, but whoever I decide to do, please stay tuned for that. I should have that out pretty soon for you guys. But until then, you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram to keep up with the latest updates for the episodes coming up and things like that. But until then, always ask questions, investigate things for yourself, and draw your own conclusions. In other words, don't follow the herd.